Hey, everybody. Michelle is here. January 6, 2026. On a Tuesday. Woo! I hope everybody's doing fantastic, magnificently, and marvelous. I am doing fantastic. No real complaints, except for the accountabilities and responsibilities of life, which can be, daunting, because some things you have to do. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I have to be accountable and responsible for my life. That's not a question, actually. It's a responsibility. So sometimes it can be a little bit, it can be, physically draining, because, you're running up against, as I told you, you're running up against the bottleneck. And so, in other words, some people are just in your way. Some people are just in the way, and usually it's those that believe they have the right to be in front of everybody, spoiling everyone's view of the world, of the space, of the universe. They're just in the way, and they're in the way because they're being allowed to do so because of their hoarding of materialism, which is power right now. It's power. Even though a lot of what's considered financial prosperity is nothing more, nothing less than smoke and mirrors, monopoly money, and once it crashes, oh boy, it's gonna be chaos and massive loss of lives and destruction and everything that comes with that type of thing. Rome is going to be a Rome redux, meaning it's going to be, more powerful than Rome was. And, Rome happened in a certain region of the world. Well, this is going to be happening globally. So I know a lot of people deal with the fact of being lonely. Once you deconstruct, I'm going to be real honest with you, you're going to be virtually by yourself sometimes. It's going to feel that way. Physically feel like you are you're the only one that's participating in this activity, and you don't have the followers you think you ought to have. You don't have the likes, and I keep telling you, the following and the likes are manipulative and deceptive marketing tools. They don't represent reality. No one has a million followers, but no one wants to hear that, and I'm not gonna necessarily be concerned about that. That'll reveal itself at some point. But again, you're gonna feel as though you're alone. Because a lot of people are not accepting of deconstruction. They don't see the need for it, because it's not, according to them, they're not being affected by it. Even though the metaphor is, you're standing on a piece of land per se. You don't recognize this every day. The water surge is rising. You believe you're just on solid ground. You believe you're on solid ground, literally, figuratively, metaphorically, until it's too late and no one's going to be able to save you. So a lot of people talk about loneliness and the anxiety of loneliness. And I told you, you have to walk this alone. You have to. You die alone, regardless of who's in the room. That process is aloneness. And so aloneness is necessary. I've talked about this many times on many videos, but I told you, you have to repeat. So that finally, like I told you the other day, when I finally got it, I was reading some material on one of the dogmas out there. I think it was Buddhism, and it was about life and death, and there was no fear, there was no coercion, there was no indoctrination. That statement said what it needed to say. And, you don't know exactly sometimes when your consciousness, your psyche, your thoughts, your mind snaps out it real quick and you get it. I remember getting it that day when I read just, it was just a few words. And I'm thinking, whoa, that was back in early 2000s, like around 2001, when I read that. And I snapped right out of it. Everything made sense. And then that's when your consciousness starts working for you. Stuff starts to get released. Impulses of energy starts to get released. And it helps you to continue on your evolutionary path. So consider that you will be alone. You might be alone for the rest of your life. And what I mean by that is, for me, as I said the other day, certain topics of conversation I cannot engage in anymore. It gives me a headache, actually. It feels like I'm being, like my brain is being squeezed. And that's because, things are not flowing properly. It's illogical, irrational, and unreasonable, contradicting. And so it causes you to kind of just spin, and so certain levels of conversation, I had to just stop listening. I had to stop listening to certain people. I had to start unfollowing people, and that's part of your responsibility and accountability. But a lot of people take it personal when you stop unfollowing them. They take it personal, and they think, okay, let's go retaliate against this person. Let's go seek revenge, and not realizing that's part of life. That's part of developing your consciousness. Like, for example, when I was a teenager, I would watch certain things on television. Well, as an adult, I don't. Same thing about, I would participate in certain activities as a young child, and as an adult, I do not. It's the same thing. So a lot of people are going to start, once you start deconstructing, you snap out of it, you get a grip, you realize what your interest was prior to that is going to change. You're no longer going to be reading certain type of books. You're no longer going to be watching certain type of programming on television. You're no longer going to be spending all day on the internet, doing this and that and the other. A lot of people get themselves wrapped up in that. See, those that are wrapped up in the video games, that's going to be the most extremely difficult part of snapping you out of it, because you allowed all of that to indoctrinate you, playing video games hours upon hours a day. And so it's like you have to reprogram your brain. It's a difficult process. So yes, you're not going to be hanging out with the same people you once hung out with. I know a lot of people hang out with the same friends that they knew in elementary school, high school, college. They all hang out together, which is a beautiful bond. It's a beautiful bond. But again, once you start to develop differently, because we all will, you're going to be seeking other types of bonding, and it may not be anybody there yet. You heard what I said? No one's there yet. So sometimes once you snap yourself out of it, you release yourself from certain certain realities. You're going to be by yourself for a minute. You're going to be by yourself on that island for a minute. And a minute can be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, your complete lifetime. But you do pass the baton over to other personalities. I talked about that enough. So you're going to feel alone on the island until others get there. So get there. Be safe on that island, metaphor. Okay? And trust me, others will also join you. Okay, once they snap out of it, and be creative as to get how they got through that bottleneck. So don't necessarily focus so much on that you're alone, because you're not. We got 10 billion people on this planet, plus equipment, animals, So you're not alone. It's just your thoughts are not programmed properly to understand what that means. That's all. Give yourself some grace. Calm down. Focus on your breathing. Okay? Breathe. Understand that this is a reconstruction process that you've not done ever before. Okay? So it's going to feel weird. You're going to feel some type of physical imbalance. But as long as you stay grounded, you understand what you're doing. It's not pretty sometimes. And I said this before, when you come to a point of being healed, come to a point of being recovered, sometimes it's not pretty to get there. You know, it's not a pretty process. You don't look healthy sometimes. You don't sound healthy. Da 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 da. It's that cleansing process everybody talks about. But this is a metaphor. It's not a literal. You don't need to be. I'm not going to go into that. It's a metaphor, a cleansing of a metaphor reality. So enjoy being in your space of aloneness. What are you here? What are you thinking about? Get your sensings involved in that process so that you can stay grounded. Allow your consciousness to assist you. Aloneness is necessary. I repeat, during the process of developing and evolving your consciousness, aloneness is necessary. That's all I'm going to say for now. And trust me, I will be back.